Thank you for coming to the Mentor Series tonight. The Mentor Series program is having the presentation of Internet and Social Media Safety, being presented by John Mesner, Tom Crockett, and Carrie Lemahue.
And when we're looking at, what are the top threats here? One is we've certainly heard about cyberbullying, right? And that's really any kind of aggressive act or threats, any kind of mean-spirited activity done electronically, done digitally. And girls tend to be the victims of cyberbullying more. I think that's something you see, and that's something you see in face-to-face situations quite a bit too, more of that relational aggression, where it's, spreading rumors or these kind of things, but now we can do it on the online platforms. And so it's more accessible and easy to do. Online predators, certainly, adults, we've probably seen the, 2020 shows where we see this sort of thing happen, where they can set them up and show that there's plenty of people willing to engage in this kind of activity, adults looking to exploit children. And here too, we can show that like the majority of the predators are male and the majority of the victims are girls. That said, there's nothing preventing that from, there's no one's really safe from that. So that's one thing just to be aware of. And then the last thing, and I think probably what we see in terms of frequency the most, is exposure to inappropriate content, either it's just vulgar language, violent images, but then also certainly sexual and really horrific things. And a lot of times I think you see this with, even if it's not my phone, right, but my buddy shows me something. I'm a lot of my friends have talked to me about situations, especially guys in the locker room or whatever, like, hey, come here, and it's a good friend, it's a friend that we like, these kind of things. I'm not talking about my kids specifically, but just that's the situation that comes up, right? Sort of a little more unstructured, and we can start showing each other the content and see quite a bit of things. There's a lot of statistics that I'll share here in the next few slides. And prior to this, I looked at a variety of different sources again, just to see, because some of these they're generally within the last 5 to 10 years. And really the statistics, when I'm looking up, even the stuff that I found that's more recent, a lot of it stays pretty much very similar numbers that I'm finding everywhere that I'm looking. And this one here, I think the part that stands out is about 25% of kids have been bullied on the internet, and about 62% have witnessed cyberbullying. And you see this especially in the schools when you're working with kids and stuff like that. They'll certainly talk about that. And one of the unique pieces to this is there's direct evidence of it, right? And in one way, I guess you can kind of look at that as a positive, because traditional in-person bullying, kids are pretty good. Anyone is pretty good about doing it sort of outside the the eyes of someone in authority, right? They typically try to avoid doing that right in the open, where they could get in trouble. Well, online, a lot of the stuff does stay there, right? And so sometimes they can show that to us, but we do certainly see a lot of kids being a part of that and then witnessing it as well. And then just like regular bullying too, traditional bullying, most of the kids, 90%, are not going to tell their parents or another adult when this occurs. So I think specific to cyberbullying, what to look for, what I would argue is part of what to look for is sometimes what you're looking for really when I'm trying to fish out anything that's going on. And that's really, in just general, sort of a change of behavior, sort of unexpected, right? So if your kid does have sort of a routine with, online activity, and now they're starting to avoid the computer or their cell phone, these kind of things, certainly no guarantee, right? That's something going on, but what is happening there? How come they seem to be, more resistant or withdrawing from these kind of activities? Conversations about the devices, if they're starting to look depressed or have low self-esteem, or eating or sleeping habits, and certainly for kids, usually older kids, but it could be anyone, use of drug or alcohol. Students, just when withdraw a little bit more and show that sign of something's different, what's going on, right? That certainly could be a sign that something's happening, and could be, you know, cyberbullying or anything related to online activity. Some of these statistics are pretty surprising to me, and I think when I started as a school psych years ago, you know, so, well, it was a while ago now, but the reality is, like, some of the social media platforms have grown quite a bit, right? But I would have told you and been convinced that, you know, there's a lot that happens online. I think after seeing it for a while, and being a part of that and understanding how it operates, and laying eyes on some of the messages that have been sent, and just how effective it can be to really, you know, pick on other kids and just expose them to pretty rough things. You know, I understand now just like how prevalent it is and stuff like that, and still looking at these statistics and think, oh man. So, you know, right off the bat, it says 40% of kids in grades 4 to 8 reported they connected or chatted online with a stranger. Some of those you might think might not, you know, maybe the first image when you think of that is, you know, a chat room, and they're talking with someone that they don't know, and that person starts digging deeper and deeper and deeper and getting more involved in their lives. And I think that's part of it. I think now it's so common to have that. You have online gaming where that's just a part of it. And I think because that sort of starts to feel a little more familiar after a while, that sort of thing, that's where some of the activity happens that we don't like. You're like, hey, we know who that person is, and they start to develop a relationship, and oh yeah, it's my friend, even though they've never met them, and these kind of things. It certainly doesn't mean all the people they meet online are bad people or have, you know, bad intent, but it's certainly an opportunity for someone who knows what they're doing to do that. Of those 43%, you know, I'll rattle off a few of these here. 53% revealed their phone number to a stranger. 21% spoke by phone with a stranger. And again, these are kids in grades 4 through 8. So this says that they have a phone number to share. They're willing to speak with that stranger online by phone, right? And 15% tried to meet with a stranger, and 11% met with a stranger in their own home. The stranger's home, a park, mall, a restaurant. They connected with them in person. 30% texted, and 6% revealed their home address to a stranger. We don't want that to happen. And I think, you know, there's a tendency, at least for myself, to think I just can't imagine my kid doing that. I think the reality is, it might not seem harmful at the time. It might seem relatively benign to the child, like they're connecting on a level, they're thinking this is fine. It's not, they might think dad might not be thrilled with it, but they also might just be thinking this is a nice person I want to connect with, right? And that's kind of scary. To me, I think it's just, you know, you're wondering who's going to be showing up at your house. That's a bad thing, right? 28% of parents have installed software on computers to prohibit certain website visitation. I did look into this a little bit more too. There's you know, more parents are willing to sort of just use their kid's device and look at it and check their browsing history, maybe look through some of their messages and those kind of things. But fewer are using the software and some of the tools that are available to us to restrict certain things. So I think that's kind of the difference there. It's not that there's no oversight necessarily, but it's to the extent, like how detailed, how involved are we getting? And actually that last one there, it says 15% on gaming consoles. I do think that's one thing just to be aware of. That tends to feel a little bit more like a playground, and you know, they're hanging out with their buddy online and stuff like that. So if you hear them chatting with someone, it may not stand out to you, but are they chatting with their buddy, or did they connect with somebody else? Did someone else enter their party? Are people able to just enter their party whenever they want? What does that look like? So that's one that I think just to be a little bit more aware of. And then this last one too, if you look at that statistic, is from 2001. There's been some other sources I looked at that are very similar to this. So 1 in 2 parents do not use any blocking or filtering software on their children's internet enabled devices. So so that's the, you know, I think we're still seeing about that today. And I think the tricky part is kids are pretty tech savvy. So even when I think a lot of people feel like even when they do install stuff, I think my kid's going to find a way around that. And it's not that they won't, but I think sometimes we might make that a little bit easy. So just a few pieces here in terms of how do we keep them safe on the internet. One of the top things too, just in terms of making sure the website is secure. If you've looked for that S there, a lot of websites, including RVA, if you bring up their website at first, it actually, you won't even see that HTTP right at the beginning there, right? You just see, it'll just look like ruralvirtual.org. If you hover your mouse over the top of it, or if you click on it, you'll kind of reveal that. And if it's not secure, it might just say HTTP. But if that S is there, that's a good sign, just that the website's secure itself. Obviously, we want to not be sharing out sensitive information. That's a no-no across the board. Set up parental controls. Most devices, anything now, they're actually, if you've navigated them recently, they've gotten pretty good at just making them very user-friendly. The interface is pretty clean. And there's quite a bit of guidance on how to do it and how to limit, whether it's time or access to certain images, these kinds of things. Make sure everything is updated. And this last one here, have your child turn in their phone to you by an agreed upon time at night to charge in your bedroom. I would add to that too. I think the more that they can be using their devices in a public setting in your home, by that I mean, the kitchen, living room, when people are around, those kind of things. Certainly that's not going to prevent everything, right? But the more that they can be around, if they're in their room with the door shut, I'm just saying, I don't know, I wouldn't have trusted the 12-year-old version of myself in that situation. And, I didn't get in a ton of trouble. I just think that I think there's a lot that can happen in those situations. Hitting the button, there we go. So the other thing I would say here too is, just as we're kind of reading through these, one thing I think too, just as we're talking about all these different ways that they can be exposed, even just things like any scams that are coming through. I think sometimes it's okay to show your kids scams that you can clearly understand and see as a scam, right? And let's say an email comes through or a text that's hey, you just you won something, you just got to click here or whatever. Show it to them. Hey guys, I just want to show you, come here, look at this email. I bank here and it looks like I got an email from this bank, but boy, it seems like an unusual email. Why would they be sending me this? They're saying they need this from me. They shouldn't need that. And then you can show them the actual email address. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's from that bank, right? I think doing those kind of things too is just great to model for them that the stuff is coming in at you too, and how to filter that stuff out and show them how to stay safe. And of course, never agree to meet anyone online, and reach out if they need help. But I think those are the big pieces right there in terms of trying to keep them safe. Let them know that you're around. I think that's kind of the big piece there. This last one, I'm going to hand it off here in just a little bit, but this I thought was an interesting slide in the sense of how much is your state doing to keep kids safe online? And Wisconsin doesn't fare very well in this. And I looked at it a little bit deeper, and it looks like, I think there's some good and some bad with this. So, Wisconsin, the reason it has a little bit of a lower rating compared to some of the other states were because of three things. One, there's no laws in Wisconsin specifying cyberbullying specifically. There's things about bullying, and there's things about online privacy and these kinds of things, but it doesn't target cyberbullying specifically. Discipline for off-campus offenses. In other words, if there's something that happens at school, will they do it? Well, there's not a state law that requires that. There are schools. Certain schools will have language about it, but it's not required by the state. And then the other reason was laws that address sexting specifically. I think the one thing I would take away from that is that, one, maybe those are things that need to be updated. On the other side, I think one of the things that I saw when I worked, especially at a high school more recently, was well, one, that high school was pretty open about like if things happen off campus, there were certain things that could happen. There was some restrictions in terms of like there were situations in which the school couldn't do much. It was more in the hands of law enforcement, but there could be penalties at school. But that was really on a case by case basis. But the other thing is like, especially the sexing piece. There are rules about, you know, what images can be on phones and who can have what and those kinds of things. And I saw that as more of the, to me, the bigger piece that was alarming to me. Some of the law enforcement that I would work with, they would say, you know, a lot of girls actually have pornography on their phone because they'll take a picture of themselves and send it on, right? And now they have an image of themselves, they're a minor, and they shared it with somebody else. And sometimes they would share that with a friend, and then that friend would share it with somebody else or something like that, right? So it created a situation where obviously it was a terrible situation. But there was, it's in terms of like the sexting specifically having legal language about it, there was certainly consequences, not just for if someone took that of themselves, but if they passed on images of somebody else, there were certainly outcomes for that. And some of that I think gets complicated and goes beyond what I know in terms of the law, but there was stuff out there. But I think what this graph is showing and what I was looking into a little bit more is there might need to be a little more guidance in terms of you know, what happens in those situations when minors are doing that among other minors and those kind of things. So but it is just something that to be aware of. And I think this image, if nothing else, shows like this stuff happens, and it's something we just need to be aware of and careful about. So oh, sorry. And this last piece here too, if you look, you know, when we share out these slides, there's a lot of different ways to set up those parental controls that we were talking about earlier on a variety of different devices. And I wouldn't necessarily say I think any device is safe. I think for myself, I keep bringing up the gaming. That's because for me, there actually was an incident. Now, as a minor, there was an incident with my son when he was 10, where you know, a kid scammed him out of something. It was like $5 of something, whatever, right? But I didn't even understand that he had been talking with anyone. I had stuff set up on my phone that I thought I was able to access it. Once I went into it and dug into it, I understood why I missed it, why I didn't see it. I thought I would see any chats that came up. And so, you know, that happened. And so for me, I was kind of thinking like, well, he's playing, but he's not playing with other kids and all these kind of things. And he didn't think he was doing anything wrong. So it absolutely fell through the cracks on my end. So I do think it's good just to look through these and see what are your kids spending time on online, and you know, what do we do next for that. So but with that, I will hand it off to, who am I handing this off to? Dawn?
Dawn. So yes, I will give her remote control here. Okay, I am going to talk a little bit about social media. I love all those things that you said, Tom. This has made me think a lot about my own son. And I would give myself a grade of like a D too. I want to trust him. And I also like walk a fine line with him too. I want him to feel that I trust him. But there are things that have come up now that he has his own phone. He's 12. And, you know, even just saying, when I say I need to look at your phone, I need you to give me your phone, you know, and him not being okay with that originally, like this, it's his private communications, right? And I'm like, but you're a kid and I need to see it. I need to see what's going on. So this definitely speaks to something that I'm personally having to handle. Social media is a dangerous place to seek affirmation, acceptance, identity, and security. And I am reading that quote because I am pretty anti-social media personally. So like, I don't put a lot on social media posts. I have a Facebook account, but I almost never post anything. You can ask Carrie. Almost nothing is on there ever. I use it for Messenger more so than anything with my friends from college, but just having gone through things in life and looking at others' social media posts, it does, it has a negative feel to it a lot of the time. And a lot of that is like everybody's putting their best foot forward. And so I personally went through a divorce, right? And like social media was like my biggest enemy for a really long time. I'm just like, oh, like look at all these perfect lives. And that's not real. I certainly wasn't posting about my divorce either, but it does sort of make you feel isolated. And so I'm never like pushing this as a good thing when I talk to kids, because I don't think there's a whole lot positive to it. I think it could potentially be positive, but they're kids. And I don't know if they know how to keep it positive. So, oh, it's not changing. Let's see. Oh, there we go.
I was going to say there was a delay on my end.
Yeah.
Right?
I was like, it's not doing anything. Okay, good. So here are some social media examples. They're just listed here, but I know there are so much more. I just Googled something today and there were things that aren't on here that I've never heard of either. I did put in the notes section just a link that talks about social media apps and what parents need to know about them, which I thought was really cool because you can look up apps and it'll give you like a definition for what they're intended. But what this article does is it says like, look at this specifically. These are things that kids try to use this for. Look at, whether or not they're putting their info out there. This is how people get in contact in reality for kids. So I'm not even familiar with all of these either. Instagram, certainly, Snapchat, TikTok. I don't know what Hive Social is. Tumblr, I've heard of. Roblox, Twitter, Twitch, I've never heard of. Discord, and 20. Do you guys have experience?
I don't know a lot of these.
I know most of them. I don't know 20 and I don't know Hive Social.
Yeah. And the ones that came up today too were like a couple of them were repeated, like TikTok, certainly Snapchat, but there were like 4 more that I was like, I don't even know what that is. I wonder if my son does. I would like to know.
Yeah. It's hard to keep on top of it because there's always new ones coming out.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So what is the right age for social media? Most social media apps require the user to be 13 years of age. But I did look up in a recent poll, parents shared that 50% of children 10 to 12 and 33% of children 7 to 9 already have access to social media accounts, which is sad. I know that. So for my son, I think Snapchat starts at age 13, and we just allowed him to get that. And like again, we went through all of the the verbiage that it gives you about like why to wait until age 13 and then what you should discuss. But I'm guilty of wanting to trust so much that I don't want to ask and I don't want to pry. And like, that's stupid. Like he's 12, he doesn't know what he's doing. And I do think like, yes, he's a great kid, but these are things that are hard for even adults to navigate. I think we don't do a good job of it. I see people making comments on other people's boards that are mean or just completely not sensitive at all. And so, a 12-year-old's not going to get that either. So I really need to step it up a bit here. So what is the right age for social media? I think delaying social media altogether helps ensure that your children are more mature about what they post, what they resist, and what they are less vulnerable to. I think that a social media in for everyone is just not the greatest thing. I know that it's promoting making connections with people, but is it I think that we're sort of moving away from actually making connections with people by having these maybe more superficial things. And I think that's sad. How often do you go out to dinner and look at other people that are just on their phones? They're not even discussing anything with each other anymore. And I think if there's anything I've been good at with my son, it's like, put your phone away. Like, we're here with your cousins right now, grandma and grandpa are over, like, that's rude. And like, you're wasting an actual exchange, not this fake thing that you're kind of doing online with your friends, who I'm not even sure are actual friends, right? So I think it's a danger to everyone. I don't want to poo-poo it altogether though, because I do think some kids that don't make connections with people in real life, this is an avenue that they might feel more comfortable with. So I think you have to sort of measure the danger against the benefit. So it does depend on your child's age and maturity. Kids definitely develop at different rates. It's not, oh, there it is, sorry. Things to consider, their ability to read social cues. So one of the things that I read today was like, before allowing your child to go on social media, present them with certain scenarios to see how they would react. Like, for example, your friend says something really negative about you. What would you do? Or you see somebody making a negative comment to one of your friends. What would you do? What would your reaction be? And I think those are all really good things to talk about. Impulse control. So sometimes kids are not thinking before they're speaking or acting. I think that's very real. And vulnerability or to criticism and rejection. This is one that I think about totally with my own son. He sounds like cocky at times, but he's super tender. And that is to cover up for how tender he is. And so I could see him having a really hard time with somebody saying something negative to him. And I don't know that he would really be quick to tell me about that, because he knows that I know that that's hard for him. And kids are looking for people that like them. They're looking for people like to accept them, right? Not so different than what we're doing as adults, but especially when you're a kid, you're just, you're softer. You haven't had the experiences that some of us adults have had to sort of learn to cope with that. And so I think that's big. Okay, let's see if we can, there we go. So benefits, even though I'm saying all these negative things, there are benefits. Building knowledge and skills to enjoy online activities and avoid online risks is a benefit of using social media. Collaborative sharing and learning in an educational environment, I think is big too. Creativity, your child can be creative with profile pages, photos, videos, and mental health and well-being, being able to connect with extended family or friends and give your child a sense of belonging. Those are all big. I just think that we have to heavily monitor the risks. So being exposed to inappropriate or upsetting content, that's all over the internet. Uploading inappropriate content, I think the temptation to sort of find out more about stuff you don't know much about, like sex, is like just too big for a child. Sharing personal information with strangers, that just makes me feel sick. Cyberbullying, I think, previously working in a middle school, we had middle school girls that obviously got into tiffs, but then we had parents of those girls also chiming in on Facebook about like how they didn't like the girl. And it was just, how do you even, manage that, calling the parents in and the kids in and telling them they're all wrong, basically, but their model is showing them something that is so wrong, and really just blasted the other girl on Facebook. And then we had to try to convince them to take that down. It was just crazy. Exposure to too much targeted advertising and marketing. I mean, that's what social media is all about, is advertising products, data breaches, social media addiction, comparing themselves with the idealized depictions of others. And I think I don't see people putting out there like their, terrible things that are happening in their life, or the worst family vacation ever. I never see those pictures. So some more stats, and I always feel like these are just, this is what really hits you. So 20 to 54% of teens have sent or posted sexy pictures of themselves. Most went to a significant other, but that's not necessarily where they stayed. 51% of girls say they felt pressure from a guy to send a sexy picture. 30 to 40% of teens say nude photos are shared beyond intended receiver. 9% of kids receive unwanted online sexual solicitations. 4% of kids have online interactions where a predator attempts to make contact offline. 50% of teens feel addicted to technology. 59% of parents feel teens are addicted. All of those are scary. I try to tell my son over and over, like, anything you put on there never is going away. And I don't even think he understands that, just the permanence of it. Like, yes, you said something and you deleted it. It's there forever. You posted a picture of yourself or someone else. It's always going to be there. I've even told him stories about kids that I know have done something like that. And, that seems to get through a little bit better. Like, I knew a kid in 7th grade that sent this to a girl. It's always going to be out there. And he's like, oh my God, but if I tell him something he has said is going to be permanent, he doesn't seem to get it as much. So giving him examples of somebody else that has happened to, I think, is big. So we talked a little bit about monitoring. I think it's crucial, especially when they're starting out. But I think sometimes over time, it becomes important to just remain constant over time. So you might think things are going really well when kids can convince other kids to do stuff that they wouldn't typically do. And I think it's just important to keep looking. Start with one platform at a time. And this makes a lot of sense to me. All of them are so different. So learn how one of them works. One of them, just even putting some restrictions on it, like it's different for every app that there is. So just figure out one at a time. And go on the chosen platform with them, look at their friends' accounts and talk about what is acceptable or unacceptable. I think that's great. You might think a kid is a really great kid, but then you start seeing what they're posting and it's like, okay, Caleb is not somebody we're going to invite over to our house anymore. What to talk to your kids about before allowing social media. Verify your connections, make sure you know the people they are friending and allowing into their network. Avoid over-friending. So I frequently hear kids say like, oh, I don't know him, but he's my friend on Facebook. And it's like, okay.
It's almost like a competition between the kids. They want to see who can get the most friends.
Exactly.
And it doesn't even matter if they know them.
No,
Right.
if you want to know the reverse, the positive to that is when they do that. And I know this because, well, the resource officer used to be right next to my office. He would create an online profile, right, that looked like one thing and wasn't. And these kids who were doing all these terrible things were just happily letting the police
Friending
officer into the party. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Wow.
that's the positive side, right?
Yep.
But don't bank on that being what's happening. I would imagine that's not the most common part. That's not who's really joining your kids' Facebook friend
Right.
group. But yeah, that was the positive side of that I saw.
Yeah, that I even noticed this with my son. He's really into basketball and he'll like play against another team and he always is like, yeah, I'm going to Snapchat with whoever, like their best player was. And I'm like, yeah, just be careful, buddy. Like they want to be liked, right? They want to be popular. They want to be cool. And there's just so much danger in that they're not seeing. So
we had a teenage foster daughter who, we had all these rules about only friending people that you know and whatever. And we would occasionally check her Instagram. It's like, you don't know these people.
yeah,
And, we talked to her about it and she'd be like, well, it's all about the clout. It's all about the clout. You have to have all the friends you can have. And like, that's the big thing.
mhm. It's sad.
Safe thing. Yeah.
And it's sort of out of our control, right? Like that's the part that scares me the most is like,
Mhm.
I just looked up new social media apps today and I don't even know what these were, and it's like it's going faster than a person can keep up with. That's the problem with technology overall. So privatize your social life, use privacy settings, be very cautious about what you share, and consider any posting permanent. Be equally cautious about posts and pictures, avoid posting strong opinions. I wish adults would do this more, derogatory remarks, and stick to pictures that are decent enough to share publicly. Avoid posting your location. Protect your accounts with a strong password. Cardinal rule, don't post anything they wouldn't say to a person's face. Tell them that they should act as if their parents or grandparents. I use my parents a lot. Like pretend grandma or grandpa read this, don't show them, yeah. Determine if you want your child to post selfies since they invite judgment on how your child looks. This would destroy my son. And kids are mean. I mean, they can be really, really mean. And they really are just looking for acceptance, especially, this age, this around like 12 to 15. It's just it's an age where you're really trying to figure yourself out and find out where you fit and then define consequences for not following the rules. So for us, that's no more phone. Carrie found this and I really just like this a lot. So it says, thought for the day, social media never shows the whole picture. Perfection is an illusion. And basically, it's a bad place to compare yourself to others, but people put on social media what they want you to see. And it's not always reality. And I think that's important for kids to understand too. It's just such a delicate age that I think, thinking anybody's life is perfect or everybody else has everything and they don't have anything, all of those things are a real threat to your kids. I worry about it for mine too, and have to remind them frequently, like, this isn't real life. This is the story they want to tell everyone. So. And then I think,
All right. I give it a takeover, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Let me just, oops. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about kind of the specifics on how to use your devices to set up safety things. So I really liked these that the Wisconsin Department of Justice put out, but they're social media tip sheets. So for example, you can just click on one and it'll give you like how to do privacy settings, customizing your privacy in a pretty straightforward and easy way to understand. So I really liked that. And then there's ones for Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Twitter. So feel free to, when we send out the slides, click on those and take a peek and see what they suggest. You should also consider a family media agreement. So if you're a tech person and you like things online, you could use this first one. It's setting up an account online and kind of doing it there. I really like this one. It's more of an old-fashioned kind of print it out and read everything and sign it. But I like how it talks about taking care of the device. that you're going to be safe. You're going to think first before you react. You're going to stay balanced, meaning that, you know, the phone and the device isn't going to take over your world. Communicate openly. And then I like this too. In exchange, my family agrees to recognize that media is a big part of my life, even if they don't always understand why. Talk with me about what worries them and why before saying no. And then talk to me about my interests and embrace my world, including helping me find media that's appropriate and fun. And then the signatures there. Sometimes just kind of having those things in writing is helpful. All right, so keeping your kids safe in terms of in-app purchases. You might want to consider setting up limits or just completely turning off the ability to make in-app purchases on your child's device. So I was able to find, like, on an iPhone or iPad how to do that. I put those directions in here, but also some of you have smaller kids who might use your phone to play games or whatever. Just make sure that you set up your phone to require a password for every purchase. I know, like, my nephew is 9, but when he was littler, he didn't realize that, like, he was making an in-app purchase, bought some things. And so my sister learned the hard way to set that up. Luckily, it wasn't a lot, but still, they don't know, you know. And then looking at age-appropriate content. So you should always try to use the apps that your kids use to get a sense of what comes up in an average feed. Try searching for content that you're concerned about and see how easily it is to find. Check the terms of use to see what the app allows and whether users can flag violators, because sometimes you're able to just report somebody. And then most social media platforms do not offer restrictions except for TikTok, where you can enable content restrictions. So they have what's called restricted mode, which blocks mature content. But even with that filter on, kids using the app on their own, they still might come across age inappropriate videos. You can lock the setting with a passcode. But that's the only one really at this point that's offering restrictions on age inappropriate content. So I found some things where you can set up parental controls on specific platforms. Some are better than others. So TikTok actually has a dashboard where parents can set limits on screen time. They added this family pairing setting. So once you as a parent link to your child's account, you can control all the privacy settings for your child's account. You can also restrict the types of videos that come up on their feed, and you can limit or turn off comments and likes and direct message and those kinds of things. So just kind of a scaled back version of TikTok. You can also do this on Instagram. You will need your own Instagram account to use the parental controls, but then you can set limits, you can remove followers, you can hide offensive comments, and you can turn off comments for specific posts on your child's account. So that's good too. Snapchat has one, but it's not as good. It doesn't allow quite as much control. So you can see the accounts your teen is having conversations with on the app only for the past 7 days. And you can't view the content of the messages. So it's not super helpful. You can also view the teen's friend list and report potential abuse for review. So how to keep your kids safe with location tracking and sharing. I think this is one we forget. You know, your social media apps, they know everywhere you go. So anyone, including strangers, can see exactly where you are. I know a lot of parents like to keep track of their kids using an app like Life 360 or something like that. You could keep location services on only for that app that you use, and then turn off location settings in your kids' social media. Once you do that, I would also go back to previous posts and see if they include that location information and delete it. And then if your child uses Snapchat, they actually have something called ghost mode, and that allows that people won't see their location. Then there's public default settings. So again, all these apps, you put them on your phone and they usually automatically default to a public profile. So that, you know, again, that means your child's name, picture, posts are available to anyone to see. So as soon as you download an app, I would just recommend go into the settings to check the defaults. If your child is using the same program on a browser too, check there as well. Just make sure everything is kind of set to private. And then there are some screen time capabilities that you can do on an iPhone and an Android. So on an iPhone, you're able to, as a parent, schedule time away from the screen. You can turn on downtime on demand. So you can just decide, my kid is done. He's not turning the phone off or getting, whatever. You can shut it down. You can set limits for app use. You can set communication limits, choose apps and contacts that you want to allow at all times, and set content and privacy restrictions. And I was talking about our foster daughter before, she was 15, but we did a lot of these things with her. We had a limit for app time for her to use. She was on Instagram, so she could only use it, a certain amount of time per day. We allowed like phone at all times, but then texting was shut down at certain times too, so she could sleep, and we would have her bring her phone in the bedroom to charge at night. So we try to do all these things too. If you click on the link, it'll bring you specifically to Apple here and shows you exactly how to do all of this. So Android has some capabilities, just not as much as iPhone does. You can set daily device limits, set a bedtime, and then limit screen time for specific apps. You may want to consider parental control software. And I know this sounds kind of extreme. It lets you block unwanted web content, limit screen time, reduce the use of risky apps. And I would just caution, if you decide to go that route, talk to your child about it and kind of have that conversation together and help them make choices and things like that. We did personally get Custodio when we had our foster daughter. And I'm really, really glad we did. We talked about it. She knew. We told her we weren't going to use it often, just if something was kind of a red flag that came up that we were worried about. And it happened that she was at homecoming and came back with bruises. Her story didn't make a lot of sense to us. So we were able to go on Custodio. So even if they delete things, you can still see that. So we were able to see a conversation between her and the boy she went with, and there was abusive stuff going on. And so it was really good that we had that. We were able to report to school. They were able to keep a much closer eye on her and this other student and keep them apart. And we were able to watch it on our end as well. So, it's not something that you want to use all the time, but it's just kind of nice to have just in case. But there's a ton of them. So Bark is a good one. I've heard a lot of good things about. Some of these I don't know. I think Disney had one too at one time. I'm not sure if they still do. But yeah, go on, check how much they are, what they all do, because they all do different things, and decide if that's something that's right for you. All right. And that's pretty much the end.
I would like to thank all of you again for coming tonight. And on behalf of the Mentor Series and Home Mentors, I'd like to thank John, Tom, and Carrie again for presenting on this topic tonight. Have a good rest of your night, and we hope to see you at upcoming Mentor Series.